So good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're still with us. May I ask a question? Who of you is from a utility, from a DSO? 1, 2, 3, 4? So a few among us. Yes, of course, also Enedis is here. A few of us. So when I've been asked for, first of all, maybe my name is Brunner. I'm the group CEO of Iskraemeco. Iskraemeco, a company who provides smart metering solutions worldwide. We have about 20 years experience now on rolling projects and pilots and all those things around the world. And when I've been invited here to hold a speech about experience of us, I thought about all the projects which we have done, all the good and the bad experience. And I looked into it and I said, well, as Cisco said once, Cisco thinks themselves they are the plumbers of the internet. Nobody sees them, but everybody is using them, and without Cisco, internet wouldn't work because of the routers and switches. And we said, well, we are the plumbers of the digital energy network, because with smart metering, nobody thinks about smart metering outside this room, outside utilities. End users don't think about the meter, about smart metering, it says. But it is the core of a digital grid, which we all need for the future with all the challenges which we will see and which we're talking about here the 3-4 days on this conference. And I said, well, I'm not going to be here to hold a speech about how gorgeous our products and our solutions are. I think everybody knows us, everybody knows what we do, what we deliver. I would like to get a step back and say, what makes a smart meter project successful? What needs a utility, a DSO, to consider when they start to go into this journey of a smart meter business, smart meter solution? And I think, looking back with the wealth of experience which we have, and I'm sure some of you can share this with us, it all starts with the business case which the utility needs to look into. The business case, is it, as we've just heard one or two speeches, the non-technical losses? Is it to steer the network? Is it to get closer to the end customer? Is it all about your business processes in your company? I think it starts there, where you need really so roughly to think and say, what is the reason why you invest multi-millions into your network? I think it's the most important thing, that you really draw down a clear business case and also understand that by deploying smart metering solutions, that you really have through roughly to work through your business process in your respective company. The whole process, from the way you install meters, read meters, do the invoices to your consumers, the way you predict how much power you need, at which time, etc., all the demand side management, the whole thing needs to be taken care of. You need to think about what are the use cases. When you go back and say, we go and start these huge investments, you need at the end to say, okay, have we been successful? What has been the use cases? We specified the business plan. Is it all through? I think all of this, also the service strategy for end users, which we have heard also today on some of our speeches here, where I say at the end, the only reason why you're doing this is, of course, you would like to earn money with what you do. To earn money, you need to have satisfied end users at the end, and you need to see what kind of service you can provide to them, what losses you can spare, where you can do things better, how you utilize your network, which is growing like crazy here in this country, in a way that you pour your investment exactly at the right points and not just general all over. I think these are the major things at the beginning which you need to be careful. Before you talk about what is the right technology, what is the right communication, and what is the right setup for those things. And then you need to see, when you have done this, you need to look into future-proof. When we look back, we are sitting here having a network which is now more than 100 years old, where you have a central power station putting energy in, and you have at the end of the lines consumers which just consume, and without any smart meters you do not know anything about your end user as such, except the end user picks up the phone and calls you and say, hey, what the heck has happened? I don't have power, or the service which I get is lousy, right? To change this, you need to look into standardization, interoperability, and you just have heard one example of the G3 Alliance, which is a PLC which is standardized, open and interoperable. There are a lot of those things, being it on communication level, being it on the MDM, software solution integration level, being it on the meter level. I think most important is that whatever you do, you go for a standardization, open and interoperable protocols, so that you never get stuck with proprietary system, with proprietary communication, being it RF, being it something else, where you just have 1, 2, 3 customers serving you at the end for your solution, and you get stuck. Because the investment which we will do here is an investment for the next 10 to 15 years in your network. So you really need to consider which way to go. You also need to see that e-mobility, as we also have heard this morning in all the other speeches, is a huge thing going to happen here to help to save CO2 emissions, etc. And this will be another interesting stretch into the network, into your network. If you look into it and say, okay, if we have 5% of the cars which you have deployed here in India as an electric vehicle, and you think about that 10% out of them coming home in the evening and plug their car into the charging station, then I think your network will most probably collapse if everybody charged those things at the same time. So you need to think about how are we dealing with this? How are we doing dynamic load profiles? How can we switch on, switch off? How can you use times during the night to do this in sequences, etc.? And what is the service you can provide to your end user on this? And also there comes the things into play where you need to think about, what about dynamic tariffs? You know, if the people would like to use it at this time and they're ready to pay double the amount for kilowatt hours, why not? That's a good business case. But you need to have the possibility to do those things, to apply those tariffs, and you have those dynamic load profiling. And these are things which you need to think upfront before you start to deploy a technology and roll out systems. Big data. One of the topics here on the agenda has been big data. And as we have heard from one of our friends at Oracle or at SAP, big data is one thing. You need to do something with it. Analytics is good, but if you know what to search for. If you think about smart meters and you just take a 15-minute load profile of a meter, then you have 96 data per day. If you just take 1 million meter, which is very easy reached here in this area, then you have 96 million data points per day, times 365 per year. So if you do not make use out of this, if you don't use it in the right way, then it's just waste of money, waste of investment. So you really need to see what are the data you're looking for, what are the analytics you need, because we'll say it's like data mining at the end. And you can mine, and if you do the right thing, you find gold or diamonds. If you do the wrong thing, then you just get dirt at the end. So it's things which you need to considering upfront. We also need to consider nowadays the blockchain technology. And this is a huge hype. Everybody's talking about it. This is the same as IoT. Everywhere you see IoT, blockchain, digital grid, digital solutions. This is all big buzzwords as such. But I think in the energy business, if you look at blockchain technology, this is something which most probably need to be used in the future if you have prosumers, you have people who produce their own energy via solar cell, maybe they store energy in a battery, they store energy in their e-vehicle during the day or during the night. They deliver energy, they consume energy, and maybe within the street, you have people to produce for the whole needs what you have in the street. and you need to have a possibility that they can sell each other the energy. To enable this, you need to think about how to include in your system a kind of blockchain technology to do those things. Also, if you look into the communication, we have heard today a lot about one thing, PLC. We've talked about RF technology. We've talked about GPS, 3G, LTE, narrowband IoT. Everything is there. But at the end, you need to ask yourself, in your area, what is the most appropriate? What is the maybe cost-effective, where we all say PLC is the most cost-effective? Is your network good enough? And if you go for PLC, are you, as a distribution company, as a utility, aware that you own the communication network and you need to do also the maintenance on the communication network? If you go for a mobile technology, then yes, you have a mobile provider, which costs, but he does the maintenance. Is the reachability good? If you go for narrowband IoT, is the bit pipe big enough to transfer all the data you would like to do in the future? Is those things considered if you look into it? And I think there's a lot of questions part which you need to start at the beginning to ask yourself and make the right business plan about this. The technology today is available and it's as good as it is, and you can find a lot of successful projects around the world. It's always different. You can't say this is the solution for the whole thing. I think it's always from customer to customer, from country to country, a bit different. And that's why you need to consider all of those parts before you go down and say, these are the things which we need to do. Also, you need to look into security and privacy. Security, if you do smart grid, digital grid, you need to see that you have at the end, as we call it, an end-to-end solution, end-to-end security, that your data are secure from meter via communication media into your central system, etc., so that no one can, A, switch you off, switch your complete grid off, make a blackout. This is one of the nightmare scenario. On the other side, also that no one can fiddle with the data, can increase, decrease, or switch off their own data. And as you see today, there's every day, I don't know how many millions hacker on the internet trying to crack data or block things and get afterwards money from you to release the data again. So also this is an essential part if you go in a smart meter rollout. And if you do not consider these things at the beginning, you will pay for it afterwards, if it's possible at all, at the end. Last but not least, there's also consumer privacy. So which data belong to the consumer, which data are you allowed to spread, and how to protect that people do not know too much about the consumer as such. If you go a step further and look into the functionality of the solution, you need to see what is the system architecture of it. You need one head-end system, you need several head-end systems, one big MDM, you go with one of the huge applications, you have different centralized, decentralized areas. What is the use cases you would like to fit with this? And also think about what is your risk. Your risk, if something goes wrong, you switch out 1 millimeter, 10 millimeter. You have data from smaller entities, smaller parts, and group it together. I think all those parts is worth to be considered. And then you can go down and say, what is the technical requirements we really need to specify, and we start to look into and roll a tender. Nowadays, we also have to think about life cycle and sustainability. You know, if you roll out 1 millimeter and you know lifetime of this maybe 10, 15 years, this millimeter comes back. So what about the e-waste? What about the material used in your system? The conflict materials, the scare materials. You know, there are some scary ideas. If you look on the OECD published list for conflict minerals and scarce materials, you will see that virgin copper is only available the next 30 years if we keep using it at the speed we are using it today. So if you look at the smart meter rollout and you think about bringing out on the road several millions of new meters, you also need to think about what kind of material is used, how can we recycle this at the end, not at the end of the day you're sitting on a huge pile of waste, which for sure in 10 years you can't just throw away anymore. But if you don't think at the beginning, if you don't include those things at the beginning of your solution, you get stuck with it, right? And also the energy resources, the exploitation, which you have to do all those things. I think this will pay more and more importance in the future. Those things. So when I just look onto this, the key messages, the key takeaways, which I would like that you understand here is, don't do a smart meter project, smart meter rollout, if you don't have clear business objective, if you have not thought about a complete strategy and a complete life cycle of your project, right? Make sure that you considered everything, also renewables, all the new stuff which is coming up with e-vehicles, the growth of your network, the growth of the people, the needs of the communication. Most important, use open standards and interoperability, interchangeability. Don't go for proprietary technology where you will get just stuck. And you know, even if this is a splendid technology, if the company goes bust next year, you get stuck. If you use a technology which is widely spread, you have always a selection. And last but not least, consider about security and sustainability on the whole thing. I think that are my point, the four major key takeaways out of what I said, and I hope that it's a value for you to think about and go to your next step. Thank you very much for listening.